I think we spoke yesterday, and it was about this acquittal of former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo over post-election war crimes. The ICC judges cleared Gbagbo and his right-hand man, Charles Blé, but the ICC prosecution team is wanting to fight back.
Indeed, there's a big legal tussle going on up at the International Criminal Court at the moment. The prosecutor essentially saying that Laurent Gbagbo, if he is released, must only be so provisionally and shouldn't be allowed to go to the Ivory Coast, because they worry that if they can continue proceedings, if there can be a successful appeal, they worry he won't return to the court in The Hague. So there's a suggestion now that they're saying that there should be a restriction on the ICC member countries that Laurent Gbagbo should go to or should be allowed to go to if he's released. We've heard from his daughter Marie saying that she says her father needs to return back to the Ivory Coast immediately.
And I guess it'll be difficult for them because they'd have to either produce more compelling evidence or prove that the judge's decision was unsound.
Exactly that, Peter. We have to wait and see whether they have some sort of card up their sleeve, which is surprising because the prosecutor really didn't provide a very concrete case, which is why this trial against Laurent Gbagbo was ended even before it should have normally finished. He wasn't acquitted when it was either a conviction or an acquittal. The defence team brought a no case to answer motion in his favour, and the judges upheld that, saying that the prosecution simply had not provided enough evidence for the trial to continue. Laurent Gbagbo clearly will want to return to his home country. He's been in prison for over 7 years in The Hague after he was arrested and transferred back in 2011. But in the Ivory Coast at the minute, anti-Gbagbo protesters have been sort of going onto the streets and causing some concern of some flare-ups in the wake of his return. So perhaps the prosecutor has her eye on that sort of political side of this case and this release as well.
All right, okay, there's another big issue, of course, and Brussels, a key area for the European Union. Theresa May is facing a vote of no confidence today. It's likely, people are saying, that she might win this one, but she lost big yesterday.
She did indeed, a huge hammering for her Brexit deal in the House of Commons. 432 MPs voting against it and only 202 in favour. That was the deal that she signed with Brussels back in the end of November last year. The European Union has insisted that that deal is the only way that the UK can leave the European Union in an orderly fashion on Brexit Day on the 29th of March this year. Big questions about what can happen. It looks like she'll face down the confidence vote against her, that she'll be supported in continuing government. But what happens then? She has to come back to Brussels. She has to present a plan, perhaps. Well, she certainly does have to present a plan to MPs to say what she wants to do. But whether she can get any concessions from the European Union, well, that's going to be a much, much harder thing. The EU presidents, EU representatives saying today that the deal that's on the table remains the best one and the only option.
And I suppose for Brussels, for the EU, the key is to say, look, if you want to leave the EU, you can, but there can't be such favourable conditions to encourage other countries perhaps to leave the EU in the future.
Totally right, Peter, but the problem is as well that this deal isn't really exactly what the European Union would want either. It's not a perfect deal for anyone. It was sort of the best of a sort of bad situation is how they see it. The issue is as well, the interesting issue is that it's all over this Irish backstop, this sort of assurance policy. If the UK and the EU can't agree a free trade deal by the end of the transition period that's set out in this agreement, that there would be no hard border on the island of Ireland. It's a complicated sort of political bit of speak that basically makes sure that that won't happen. The UK absolutely hates it. Many MPs voted against the deal because of it. But for the European Union, this is an absolute red line. It must be in any future deal. So it's hard to see how any sort of renegotiation between the two sides can really allow it to be passed by MPs in the Parliament in London when the European Union is going to be so intransigent on this issue.
All right, Jack, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed. That was Jack Parrock speaking to us from Brussels, speaking, of course, of the acquittal of Laurent Gbagbo, former president of Ivory Coast, who the prosecutors are now wanting restrictions on his ability to leave imposed upon him, just in case that they have a successful appeal. And also talking about Theresa May, of course, losing big in Parliament yesterday, 432 votes to 202. That's the largest loss that a government has had since World War I. In other circumstances, a prime minister would have had to resign. But anyway, we